Hey guys, this is Vanessa Dyer, and I'm the Charlotte, North Carolina-based lifestyle blogger behind thecheekybean.com. With several successful years as a business owner, a first-time mom, and a deep passion for health and wellness, I'm here to share my honest, unfiltered advice on all things motherhood, relationships, travel, and more. So grab a coffee and join the conversation. This is the Cheeky Bean Podcast.
Welcome back to the Cheeky Bean Podcast. This episode features my lovely husband, Shane. It only took me almost 30 episodes to convince him to join this conversation.
Let's get it, baby. Let's go.
Today, we are chatting about marriage after babies, marriage tips, and parenting. And let me just preface that we are by no means experts on this. We are far from perfect. And if you're listening, just know that this is what has worked for us and what we've learned in our 10 years together. But it's definitely not the Bible, if you know what I mean. So, ready to start the conversation?
Let's go. Let's kick it off.
Okay, I want to start by this. I did a little research before we had this conversation just because I was curious about some of the data around marriage after kids. And research actually shows that marital satisfaction after babies goes down by about 68%. But it only lasts till kids are about 4. So there's an actual age that has been pinpointed to this. And I think that it's 4 because by then they have a bit more independence. They can tell you what they need. They can put their own shoes on. They may be in a pre-K class during the day. So Liam will be 3 in January, and I can speak from our experience thus far, but it definitely does get easier with age, wouldn't you say?
Oh, 100%. The first 2.5 years are brutal, but now that once he's obviously active, he can do his own stuff, he's on his own, becomes a lot more, I guess, fun and enjoyable.
Yeah, especially for you as a dad, I feel like.
Yeah.
Those first couple years, like, I would say, what would you say the hardest part of those first couple years was?
Trying to manage everything, he's obviously all the responsibilities with that, and then everything else you got going on in life, it's a lot. So once he's more active, he understands what's going on. You can take him a lot more places. He understands things, right? Like, that's when it starts to get really fun. Not to say like the first couple of years weren't like fun, but they were just a lot.
It's hard. Yeah.
Very. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just telling our podcast producer, Kristen, like, we were having this conversation around, are we going to have a second child or not? And I was really surprised by your response when we most recently had this conversation. We were like, I'd love to have a second one, which you've kind of said from the start. But this was the first time I've kind of heard you say, like, but gosh, I feel like we're finally in this place where things feel really easy and things are really fun. And like those first 2 years were just a lot.
Yeah, you start to think like, man, do I want to go back through that again? Like, it's not hard where it's miserable. It's just hard where it's hard, I guess. So part of you is like, hey, I want to have another one for Liam, right? And not just our family, but also just for him to have a little brother, a little sister. And you're like, whatever, let's just roll through it and get through it, because once you get there, it'll be great. And then the other side of it's like, well, he's 3 now and he's rolling and he's good.
Yeah.
You want to just enjoy this too. So, I mean, obviously everybody's got their own personal preference, but yeah, it's a journey for sure.
It is. Well, everyone, I think the most burning question on social media is like, how has our marriage changed after kids? And I think that we can both say when Liam entered the picture, it definitely changed our dynamic. And I think when I was thinking about like, what's the number one thing that changed in my mind, I feel like we bicker more frequently, whether it's about different parenting styles, just being mentally drained, putting our domestic duties on a weigh scale. Your partner is definitely the easy target. So we know how to push each other's buttons.
Yeah.
And research also actually shows that we are the least nice to the ones that we love the most. And I think that's because you're the most comfortable with that person. Like, you think to yourself, okay, well, they're going to forgive me. We're married. Like, this is long-term. There's a lifetime commitment here.
Yeah.
But arguing it's actually healthy. Like, if you're not arguing, there's probably something else going on within the marriage, but it's how you argue and then how quickly you make up that really matter. And so I think we've done a good job. Like, we've been together for a total of 10 years now. I don't know if you knew that or not, but I was counting it this morning. I'm like, wow, 10 years, 2013. But we've done a lot of work behind how to argue with each other. So full transparency, Shane and I have gone to marital counseling on and off. I am a big proponent of marriage counseling. We did premarital counseling, which I think was less beneficial actually than after the fact, because once you're married, like, the dynamic changes so much. You're cohabitating in the same house. You have different ways of living. Then you have kids that enter the picture. So we've done a ton of work to better our marriage and be a more solid, powerful couple, I would say. Yep. And I want to talk a little bit about like that bickering aspect, because I think when kids enter the picture, like we probably always bickered a little bit before we had kids, but I feel like all the issues that you have early on in your marriage are still issues when you have kids, but they're just tenfold. Like they seem so highlighted. And for me, it was like mostly coming from my end where I was putting everything on a weigh scale and everything became very tit for tat, where I was like, well, I did this and I did that and I did that. And what have you done today? You know, because as the mother, the burden, especially in those first, like, especially in the first year, is really on the mom. And that's partly because, you know, husbands can't breastfeed and there are a lot of things that you can't help with. But will you just kind of share your perspective on that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, shout out to Amy, marriage counselor.
Yes,
Love Amy. Shout out.
She's incredible.
Yeah, I think it's just a journey, man. Like, we've talked about this. Like, I feel like the most important thing, I guess, think for us was just trying to decipher and kind of land the plane and be intentional with like responsibilities about who owns what, and you know, whether that be early on where it's like, you know what, like I'll be the night owl, you know what I mean, or you know, I'll get really up, whatever it may be, and like clearly defining kind of what that is, so it's not like this whole back and forth, like, oh, I did this, you did this. It's kind of like, hey, like, you know what, like, I love this aspect of it. You hate this aspect of it. Let me take that, right? Or, you know, vice versa. So I think it's just, it probably varies, you know, family by family, couple by couple, but I feel like that worked for us. And like the bickering in general, I mean, it's just stress, right? I mean, you go from having zero responsibility. I mean, all we were doing is, I mean, we're type A people personalities. Like all we want to do is grow our business, be successful, you know, like travel, I mean, whatever. And then you get this human and you're like, that's completely different, you know?
Yeah.
So I just think it's like, you know, it's growth, man, right? It's all about working through stuff. You're going to argue, so argue well. Shout out to Amy. But I think it just, you know, really, I think I would say like advice is just figure out and be really intentional with what works best for each person and stick to it. And I don't know, I just feel like that worked for us.
Yeah.
We kind of were figuring it out, I guess, for the first 6-9 months, but then once we got into our routine, it was solid.
Yeah. Well, and you made a good point there too, like responsibilities and owning what responsibilities that you're good at or owning what responsibilities that you actually enjoy. Like you love bath time and you're like, I'm going to own that. I'm going to own bath time every single night. And I don't mind putting him to bed. And so I'm like, cool, you do bath time. I'm going to do bedtime. And that's our routine and it works for us. And it feels like we both have a role in that part of the day. And so it feels very split. Like you go up, you do bath time, you brush teeth, you get him in his jammies. And then I go up, read a book, rock him to sleep, put him down in the crib. And that's, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it's not regimented. Like sometimes we'll split off or whatever. Sometimes you want to do that. Sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
So I think that like, again, when you got when this whole thing happens, you're like, oh shit, I need to figure this out and just try to figure out how to be a parent real quick. I don't know anything about anything. You've read books, you've done this, you've done that, but like you're live now. I think like,
you just get thrown into it.
Yeah.
Basically.
I think that like just landing on, you know, things that people really want to take on responsibility for, it just clears a lot of the noise. So there's not that like, man, like I feel like I'm putting in everything here and I'm not feeling you, I'm not hearing you, I'm not seeing you taking, you know, part in this stuff, especially with my work and your work, like we're traveling, we're doing. So yeah, I think it's worked out great for us. I mean, there's still stuff here and there or whatever with it, but I mean, the routine's worked, I guess.
Yes. That tit for tat is a lot less these days because we have clearly defined those responsibilities and what we're taking ownership of. And like, even with, you know, school drop off, like Liam was going 2 days a week and you're like, okay, cool. I'll take Mondays, you take Wednesdays. And then we stuck to that routine. So we try to, I think when we went into having kids, you know, my biggest thing was like, I am not somebody who wants to be 100% the responsibility for this child. Like we are having this child together. I want this to be a 50-50 split. And we were on the same page as that. Or we were on the same page there. And I think, you know, then you get into it and you realize like, okay, there are certain things my husband can't help with, but you did a really good job, especially in those early days. Like I'm somebody who really needs my sleep and you are somebody who doesn't need a lot of sleep. And so we kind of sat down, we're like, okay, where is your strong suit? and like, where are my weaknesses? And that was one thing where you're like, okay, I'll take night duty. Like, you'll pump, put milk in bottles, and I'll be the night owl. And then we took shifts, so I still had to wake up to pump, but at least I wasn't pumping or breastfeeding, then pumping, then changing the diaper, re-swaddling.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. And so I do think there are people out there that are like, well, why should both people be sleep deprived? But we had this like shift schedule that worked where I went to bed really early with Liam, slept to like 1 or 2 a.m. And then you were up until 1 or 2 a.m., did whatever, bottle came in between there. And then I would get up, pump, and do the whole 9 from that until like I don't know. I don't even remember what the shifts were, but we split up the night, and that worked really well for us because I also felt like we were in it together. And it wasn't like 100% solely on me. Yes, we were both awake, but you operate really well on no sleep. So it was helpful to me that I kind of had a partner that was like going through the thick of it with me.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, again, I think it differs family by family, couple by couple. Some people, just probably get thrown into it and they're naturals. I mean, I have no idea, but I just think that what's really changed, at least since what I've seen out there, even though it's our first kid, is, the dynamic of a woman and the relationship, like in terms of work and what they do, is completely changed, right? Like, I mean, you're not a stay-at-home mom type person. That's just not the way you roll. That's one of the reasons I love you. So, but that's different than maybe back in the day when, people used to have kids and, go through the whole motions.
Yeah, the gender norms.
Yeah. So it's changed. And now then you get into the whole thing around childcare and, you know what I mean? Like how that looks and feels. How do you, navigate the schedule every week and who, you know what I mean? Like it's like I said, it's a journey. But I think for us, that kind of routine, the intentionality behind like, hey, this is what this week looks like. This is what I'm going to own. This is what you're going to own. This is where I'm going. This is where you got to be. And like clearly defining that. So we're like, all right, sweet. Like this is what we got for the month of September. Like, remember we used to have like build out where I'm going, where you're going, what we're doing, where he's going. So,
we send a calendar for literally everything.
So,
it's got to be on the calendar.
It probably doesn't work for everybody, but like, again, for my advice in terms of new parents, like, I don't know. I just feel like that kind of style where it's like, all right, man, like we're in this together. There is no like 70, 30, 50, like that we both needed that. Like you got this, I got this, let's roll,
Yeah. The other thing too, I think that we really had to learn maybe the hard way too, was like initially even before kids, like we weren't arguing well. It took us a very long time to like get to that point. But I saw a statistic that men actually need about 20 minutes to calm their nervous system, but women have the ability to snap back much quicker. And the reason—
Where'd you get that from?
I don't remember what study it's from, but the reason for that is it's really interesting because it's science backed. And the science behind it is that when we were cavemen and women were breastfeeding their babies, the nervous system has to snap back right away to be able to process milk production. So women can get very stressed and then have the ability to snap back much quicker than men. So when we were going through marital counseling, our therapist, whatever you want to call her, psychologist, psychiatrist,
shout out to Amy.
Shout out to Amy. She gave us this homework of like, okay, when the argument is starting to feel escalated, like when you start to feel it go from a conversation to a more heated discussion, take a time out. You have to take a time out. And
Walk
like
away.
This was before I read this data. So now like it makes sense to me because I'm like, okay, Shane is definitely I'm somebody who wants to hash it out right then and there. Shane is definitely someone who wants to walk away from the discussion and take a long break and then come back to it later on. And in my mind, I'm like, well, why are we prolonging this? Like, let's just have the conversation, get to the end of it and move on. And we weren't jiving because when you needed your time out before, we got this advice from Amy, it was making me even more mad because I was like, I just want to move on. Like, let's just hash it out and move on. So we've learned that anytime the discussion starts to get heated, and we're definitely not perfect at this, but we do really try, and you're probably better at it than I am. We just say like, okay, cool, time to take a time out. Let's separate, and then we can reconvene. And I do actually think it's worked for us.
Yeah. Listen, sometimes, there's a lot going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just is what it is.
Yeah.
So, I'm a realist with like, stuff's going to come up. Arguments are going to happen with my best friend, with my wife. Like it is what it is. Like we just need to, it's perspective, right? Like I think that like when I feel like when you've, early on, whatever it may be, when you start living with somebody, you're dating somebody seriously, you're, getting involved with their families, their life, like what their background is, like there's a lot there to unpack. Like you think you know somebody and then it goes even deeper. You really get to understand them. And there's arguments that come up. Like you and I don't see eye to eye on like a lot of stuff, but then we also see eye to eye on a lot of other stuff too. So I just think it's all about like perspective, and we are both stubborn people. I'll also say that too, right? Like I tend
Super
to like
stubborn.
want to be right, and you are I want to be right too.
Yeah.
So I think that's led to it. But again, like, Amy, just talking, just in our friends, like what they go through and stuff like that. Like that I think that's a common thing. So it's just trying to like, hey man, I'm not going to be right in this situation, or why am I even trying to be right? It's nothing I don't want to be right about anyway. Who cares? Like if this is how she feels, or this is how she wants to do something, like, why don't I just take a step back and understand that that's what she really wants, or that's how she wants us to go, and like align on that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the timeout thing, yeah, it's just like let's take a break for a second. Like you're heated, I'm heated, and I'm probably coming from a place of not understanding where you're coming from. So I need to shut up for a second and think. And sometimes it's vice versa too. So I don't know. I just think it's like getting to a place where it's like the word that comes to is just respect, right? It's like respect this person's opinion, respect your wife's opinion, respect her feelings, right? And then vice versa for, your husband or whatever relationship you're in. So yeah, it's worked, but it's nobody's perfect, and it's a journey. And
Yeah, it's something you have to work at.
I think it's made our perspective and our like overall family better.
Yes.
Even though it's tough in the moment, I just feel like it's like there's a level of respect that continues to build there, and like understanding and perspective over time.
Yeah, 100%.
10 years strong, baby.
10 years. I know. I also think, to your point, empathy is really contagious. So if you want more empathy from your partner, you can elicit that by giving it to them. Like it's a reciprocal thing. So let's say that Shane says something that's hurtful, rather than coming in with blame saying, I know you're frustrated, or I know you're really tired, or I know it's been a long week with Liam. Your defense is down by starting the conversation that way versus starting the conversation in attack mode.
Right.
And so that's also something that I think, because we are both stubborn and we both always want to be right, we've had to really work at too. I'm probably the more empathetic person in the marriage, but I think you've done a really good job, especially after having kids, realizing like what the workload actually is, especially with you traveling all the time. That burden does fall more heavily on me. And for a while, I think it took you a little while to see that or be able to understand that.
Yeah.
But now you come from a place of empathy where you're like, I know this is a lot on you. And that's how you start the conversation. And that makes the conversation so much easier to have, because I feel seen and I feel heard from the start.
Yeah.
I think that's another big thing that is probably marriage advice in general, but also after kids. It's one of those things that's kind of heightened.
I think my mindset early on was like, well, yeah, you're the mom. Like, you'll take care of this. Like, I got to go to New York for a week, or I got to go travel next week or whatever. Like, it's good. Like, you're here, you got them. And that's true. But like at the same time, like it's a lot.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's a lot. And then you throw on the top of the fact that you run a business, a big business with a lot of moving parts. Like that just stuff didn't resonate with me, I think, early on.
Yeah.
Which was obviously a mistake. But I think more, now I'm in a place where I'm like, oh, dude, that's completely unfair to think like that,
Yeah.
And so, again, some people are in different situations where like that's just what they want to do, and that's great. It's amazing. But you and I aren't those types of people. Like we go sun up to sundown with work and what we're doing. Like we have to be able to both play a role in that.
Right.
Empathy is key, folks.
It is. Well, and then in terms of help, like a lot of the learning lessons that I've learned are, as the mom and the wife in the marriage, I tend to think, like, how can you see that I don't need help? And so that's kind of where I was at before we went through these therapy sessions, where I was like, I don't feel like I should have to ask for help. Like, how can you not see that I'm drowning in my day to day? I'm like laying out everything that I do in a day to you, and me having to lay out like what I need help with, to me was like, why do I have to do that? That's like another thing on my plate, another to-do on my to-do list to do. But something that really helped us in therapy was Amy was like, you have to, like, men just don't think that way. They are not, Like if they are stepping over a pile of laundry in front of the laundry room, like they're not going to think like, oh, that laundry needs to go into the washer. Let me just do it. They're just going to step over it because that's just how males are built. They're built very differently than females. So something that she taught me to do was like, if you need help, you have to specifically lay out what you need help with. And that was something that you told me too. You're like, I'm more than happy to help you. I hear you saying that you need help, but I don't know what you need help with. I need you to tell me what you need help with.
Yeah, like I just didn't pick up on cues, I guess, that well. I don't know. I mean, like it's
not
like one of those
just
things.
you,
Like I feel like I'm a very empathetic person. So if I see somebody struggling, I'm going to go to it, whether it's you or anybody, and see what's going on or where I can help. So I mean, either I did a terrible job with just picking up on cues, or like you were just the type of person that needed to be a lot more direct with like, I need help with this stuff. And I think that's kind of where we landed. It was like, hold up, I'm completely blind here. Like I didn't even know that was a thing.
Right.
I got that
we had
in 2
so
seconds.
many conversations around you being like, I had no idea this was a thing. And I'm like, what? How? You know?
It wasn't malicious. So it's just more like, hey, like, again, for me, I needed it to be really regimented. Not like, hey, this is every single day, this is what this is going to look like. But like, hey, like, this is kind of something that's causing me some stress and anxiety every week. Like, if you see this, like, can you run point with that, or, whatever. And I think that helped.
Yes.
Because I felt like in a place I was like, damn, she's struggling like with this. I'm in some way, shape, or form causing that, or putting gas on that, which sucks. It's a shitty feeling.
Right.
How can I help with that? Like now that I know, like, okay, cool. Let me go in and take that on. But
yeah,
I think what people can struggle is like they think they can get through it, or they just try to, battle through like, whatever, this is just kind of my role. And then it just become miserable. And then it leads to like people in the place where they're unhappy, or, they get stressed out about a lot of things. Like, so I don't know. I just feel like communication's always been fairly good with us in terms of how we feel, but it's gotten better with Liam.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, and I think communication is really the foundation of a marriage before and after kids.
Huge.
And that's something that we've had to do a lot of work on because our communication styles are very, very different. But we've come so far in 10 years in how we communicate with each other. And, sometimes Shane will say, like, what can I do to help? And in a perfect world, I'd love for him to be able to read my mind and, know exactly what I'm thinking. But here's the thing. Guys don't operate that way. Like, you can't read my mind. I can't expect you to read my mind. So I had to learn to like let go of that expectation. And once I let go of that and learned how you communicate and what you need to operate in our marriage and our parenting styles at 100%, I think we made huge strides, both in our marriage and in how we parent.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think if you have a child under the age of 4, it's just a hard phase.
Yeah.
It will definitely get better. Kids put a magnifying glass on all the issues that you probably used to have before your marriage. It just seems bigger once you have kids.
It's a good heart to have.
Oh, 100%. So I want to move on to like, how do you keep the flame alive? Because we all have busy lives. We're working, we're parenting, we have a social life. Shane travels all the time. Sometimes I travel for work, not nearly as much as I used to, but that's a dynamic in our marriage and in our parenting styles. So one of the big questions on Instagram was, how do you remain husband and wife and not just mom and dad? And I would love your perspective on how we do that.
Yeah, I mean, just got to be selfish or intentional sometimes with doing, stuff together, right? It's like, it's just kind of the same thing we just talked about with just making sure we're on the same page with what Liam wants and needs and how we can, provide the best life for him. It's the same thing for us. It's like, man, we really got to make sure we take time for ourselves. Like, so again, I feel like that was really hard at first 12 months. I mean, you're in it, you know what I mean? But luckily we've got some really good family here. Your family's close, so they can help out. But like, being intentional with, hey, we need to take 2-3 days and go here, right? Like without Liam, like let's figure out who can watch him and let's go do us time, Or I feel like we've been pretty good about like really getting good with scheduling date nights and stuff, just to dip away for a few hours, just for us. I mean, I just feel like you kind of need that. I actually will say, like, the first 12 months, I don't know if we did enough of that, where it was like
we definitely did
all the time.
So
I think it's like, like you selfishly, you want to take a step back and be like, dude, I want to be able to give anything and everything to this kid and like give him the best experience of all time. I want to take him with me here. I want to go here. I want him to, let's go take him to this trip, this place, or go show him this thing. But then there's also times where you're like, hold up, like you know, like me and Vanessa need time away too. Like, let's go do something together. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like we just have like, we'll sit in bed and be like, dude, we haven't really talked. Like, what are we doing? We got nothing planned.
Yeah.
Like, you and I, you know what I mean? Like, let's open up the calendars and figure out where we can go and where do we want to go? You know?
Yeah.
It makes it fun. It keeps it, you know, to your point, the flame alive.
Yes.
But I do think you have to kind of make sure you kind of step back and take time to do that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the number one thing that we've learned post kids is that we have to be super intentional about carving out time for you and I. And we kind of set up this schedule where we're like, okay, we're going to do one date night a month. We're committing to doing one date night, just me and you, not with other friends, not with other people, not with Liam. You and I were going to dinner, just the two of us, once a month. Mm-hmm. And it kind of became fun too, because then we're like, okay, what restaurant are we going to try this month? Like, where are we going to go? It was something to look forward to. We put it on each other's calendars. We pick a date and time that works for both of us. And then you always have that thing to kind of look forward to.
Yeah.
But it's also, it's easier said than done. And I also think sometimes a date night isn't enough. Like sometimes you get to a point in your marriage where like just a couple hours away isn't enough to really recharge that marriage battery. Mm-hmm. And you and I a lot of times are like, okay, we need a whole weekend away, or we need 3 or 4 days away. And I know that, money's a factor. That's obviously expensive. Whether you have help or not is a big factor. Thankfully, we do have in-laws who are more than happy to come, stay the weekend and give us a little bit of a break so that we can do these like parents only vacations together. But something that we did and really enjoyed, and I think when we sat down, we were like, what makes us the happiest as a couple we realized was traveling. Mm-hmm. And I actually think that came up in one of our counseling sessions. Like she was like, what do you guys enjoy doing the most? If you both had to sit down and say, here's when we are the happiest, here's what makes where the most joy in our marriage comes from. We both had the exact same answer. And we were like, we love to travel together.
Yeah.
And when
it's been like this since the jump. Really.
Yeah. And when we had Liam, obviously there's so many different dynamics that go into being able to do that. It's a lot harder to just pack your bags and go for a weekend. Mm-hmm. So we kind of got away from doing that, and we sat down and we're like, okay, we need to be really intentional about, let's maybe once or twice a year, me and you just go somewhere for 3 or 4 nights. And, you have to schedule it out. You got to fly the in-laws in, and it's definitely harder, but I think that is where we really get an opportunity to full-heartedly let go of all the stress of being a parent, let go of all the stress of our work environments, let go of all the stress of like household chores and duties. And like, we can truly 100% focus on just our marriage. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, this year we did Hawaii, which is probably the longest trip we've ever done away from Liam.
Yeah, that one ended up turning out well.
Yeah. Unfortunately, half of the trip, Shane had a work crisis, but it still was, it
was our time away. It was great.
Yeah, it was our time away, and I cherished that time together. And we always try to pick something that's really relaxing too. So we'll do like a tropical vacation where our main event of the day is laying by the pool or the beach, or Shane will go play golf or something like that. We'll go get a massage, but it's a great way to decompress and have zero outside stressors.
Yeah. I mean, it's like critical, I think, for us. And I get, it's a lot of, it doesn't have to be like a Hawaii thing either. It could be just it could be a weekend away in the mountains. It could be, going somewhere down in South Carolina. I mean, it could, whatever we want. I mean, but traveling's always been something I feel like we both like love, right? Because we love to, we love new restaurants or food or, just good vibes and stuff like that. And so, again, I think it's one of those things where like you can blink your eyes, especially if you have a really young one or a young family, and like 6, 7, 8 months go by and you're like, holy crap, like we don't, we haven't really thought about what we're going to do. And then, you're 8 months into the year and you're like, damn, we haven't taken any time away for ourselves. Like, let's really think about how we can do this and get away and stuff. So I just think it's healthy. And, for us too, like there's a different dynamic of it. Like our families want to be involved with Liam. We've been super blessed to have 2 families that love, Liam. And so they also want time with him too. So it's like a perfect thing where it's like, hey, like, our families want to come spend time with him. Like we need to get away for a few days too. Like let's marry the 2 and go do something. And I think when we look back on it, like, way down the road, like those will be the kind of the times that we're like, I don't know, super cherish.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, some of my favorite memories are trips that we've taken. And I think when we talk about, what we want to do next, we're always like, oh my gosh, I'd love to go back here because we have such fond memories of that time that we kind of nourished our relationship and relit the flame, maybe,
That's
you know?
right.
I think the other thing that really comes up a ton in marriage after kids is the thought of the roommate phase, like especially in that first 12
The
months.
roommate phase.
Yeah.
What's that?
It's like you're living under the same roof, but you
Okay.
kind of have become roommates instead of being like husband and wife or
It's kind of like Trey Bear
partners.
Right now. Trey Bear's in the roommate phase.
Trey Bear. Trey is Liam's
Shout out to
uncle.
Trey.
That's Shane's brother.
Yeah.
We really need him to get married. We love Allie. Anyway, in the first 12 months, you're just going through the motions because you're in survival mode. And so I kind of got to a place where I was like, I really feel like we are just living together as roommates. Like at the end of the day, we're both so spent from the entire day of caring for an infant, working full time, you know, meal prepping, bottle feeding, pumping, breastfeeding, all the things that at the end of the day, like you're on the couch in the living room watching TV. I'm in my room because I'm more comfortable in bed watching TV, and we're like under the same roof, but actually spending no time together.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really common thing that not a lot of people talk about. But when I bring it up to my friends, like they 100% relate to that, especially that first like year and a half after having a kid, because the tank is just empty. You've got nothing left to give to each other because you're just in that thick of the sleepless nights, the hustle and bustle and the busyness of like washing the bottles, doing the dishes, doing the baby's laundry, changing the diapers. You know, there's so much going on that I got to a point where I was like, hey, wait a second. Like every night, like we aren't coming back together in our bedroom at night. We're doing our own separate thing. And I really kind of miss like that companionship that you normally have by watching a show together or watching a movie together. Or like, honestly, for me, we don't even have to be watching something together. Like if you are just sitting next to me in bed and you're watching a show and I'm reading a book, or vice versa, you know, you're looking at something on your phone and I'm watching a show, just you being there and your presence alone was like what was missing for me.
Yeah. I think it's like there's a balance there. There's like because there's also the time where you're like, dude, I want some alone time too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we've been in war right now for the last 12 months with this kid. Like, you know what I mean? Like I need like some time alone for a minute here. You know what I mean? So I agree. I think it's like, it's a really roommate-ship. Okay. I think there's a common ground you can kind of find there. But again, like if you don't know, like sometimes like at first, I think there's some situations where I didn't know about it. Like you were like, wait, hold up. And I'm like, wait, hold on. I'm watching football. You hate football. Or
Right.
You don't really like football.
Right.
And you're like, I know, but like, can we like, we got to figure out a way for like us to continue to like, you know, watch a show or whatever at the same time watching football or something. So
Yeah.
it's a little bit of sacrifice. At the same time, it's a little bit of like, hold up, time out. I need some alone time too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I think a lot of moms also get to that point where they feel like really touched out. And so they also kind of naturally move into the roommate phase, but that's not good for the longevity of your marriage.
No.
So again, it like goes back to being really intentional about, like I had to bring this up to you and we had to sit down and be like, okay, even if it's 3 nights a week, like you've got Monday Night Football, okay, then watch Monday Night Football in the living room while I watch my show, you know? But like 3 nights a week, we both, after we put Liam down, like go lay down in bed together. We watch a show together. We find something that we enjoy to do together so that we're working on us and it doesn't feel so lonely, I would say.
I agree. I think that's different for it because some people like to watch the same stuff or whatever, like to do the same stuff at night. I also think like you made a good point. Like when you're first year and a half, dude, I mean, you're beat. I mean, you're literally beat up. You know what I mean? Like, and I think there was some of that too, where it's like, hold up, I don't even want to watch a show.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm just trying to sit here and go to bed. Like, you know?
Yeah. Well, everyone has a different way of unwinding too, and ours are very different.
Very different. I mean, I'm super active, right? I don't like to sit around. Like, so like laying in the bed or sitting on the couch and watching TV for 4 hours is like not my thing. It just never will be. But I do think there's situations where you can kind of come together on it. But at the same time, like I said, I mean, for at least for the first year and a half, like, I mean, dude, it's go. I mean, you're up till 4 or 5 in the morning every night with them, and then you got to go to work. And then, like, if you're jumping on a plane and you're coming back, and it's like Thursday night, and you're landing, and you're like, oh my gosh, like, it's a lot. You gotta be able to shuffle that type of stuff. But sometimes it's just cool to just sit there and kind of talk, catch up on your day, and then it's lights out, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's another way, like, back to the question of like, how do you keep the flame alive? Like, there's a lot of sacrifice that happens in marriage and a lot of sacrifice that happens after having kids in marriage. And that's something that, like, if your partner, like, to me, that's really important to me.
Yeah.
If your partner is coming to you and saying, hey, this is really important to me, like, this is what I need to feel connected to you, then you just have to make that sacrifice.
Yeah.
Like that's another topic that came up in our sessions with Amy that we had to really work through. Like Shane loves football.
Keep pounding.
I went to Clemson, like outside of Clemson football,
Shout out to Syracuse too.
Yeah, I could care less about football. And football season kind of is very all consuming. You know, like game days are on Sunday or you go tailgate, you go to the game. It's an all day event. Then you have Monday night football. There's football on Thursdays. There's college football on Saturdays. Like it's literally pretty much never ending.
Yeah, there's a lot.
And the one thing I wasn't expecting to come out of therapy was Amy was like, you have to learn to sacrifice. And so I was like, well, I don't enjoy football. So like, why do I have to go do something that I don't enjoy? And she's like, because it's a marriage. Like you both have to make sacrifices for each other. And I think you can learn to like going to the games. You don't have to go to every game.
It's
kind of
like when
Sunday.
It's kind of like when I didn't like taking pictures.
Oh, you still don't like taking pictures?
Yeah, you know what I mean? But you do it because you're like, you kind of have to do it.
I'll beg to differ on that one.
Well, I've got some bangers out there that I've taken.
You will if I ask you very nicely.
I hear what you're saying.
But yeah, it's...
Yeah. Well, obviously it's completely different now with Liam. Now it's more like, okay, Liam's about to be old enough and now I'm going to be able to do those things with him, which is going to be unbelievable. I can't wait.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a time there where you have to be, there's a give and take. Let's put it that way.
Yes. So yeah, she basically was like, you should go to a game or two a season and
we're going.
And yeah, give credit where credit is due. I have made big strides to learn to love the game of football. And I actually do kind of enjoy going to the games once or twice a season. Like that's
You're
my
good
max.
till halftime. Halftime's you.
I'm always good till halftime. Yeah. I can do anything for 2.5 hours or 2 hours,
That's right.
you know? So
yeah. I have fun going to the games with you.
Yeah. Yeah. It actually does always end up being a good time.
Oh, it's great.
I just don't love it being like 9.5 hours all day long. Like
right.
I am just somebody who decompresses in a different way than you do.
100%.
And I need that downtime.
100%.
And Sundays are my downtime day normally because Saturday is always like crazy. We have 50 million birthday parties to go to. We're going out to dinner with friends. We've got family time. There's just so much going on that Sunday's really the only day to do that. So once or twice a season, I've made the sacrifice. I go to a game with you. It's something that you enjoy. I've learned to enjoy that, you know, that time together too. And I get to kind of like keep the flame alive for you because I'm sure that you love when I come to a game. Like that's something that is fulfilling to you and you get to do it together with your partner.
It's been great.
Yeah.
It's been great.
Yeah. So sacrifice is another big one.
Yeah. I think especially with like sacrifice with what your significant other likes to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's no marriage out there or no couple out there that just like the husband loves what the wife does. The wife loves what the husband does. If it is, it's really rare and it's amazing. But like, there's a lot of times where there's sacrifice with like somebody loves to do something the other person doesn't love to do. And you do it because you love that person. You want them to enjoy it. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like I said, there's a lot of stuff I think that we sacrifice for each other that we both like to do. Yours is fitness. I mean, like you work out, you love to do workouts, classes, whatever. Like I try to be open to doing whatever I need to do so you can go do that, right? Mm-hmm. Whether that's watch Liam, take Liam, whatever it may be, like go do that because I know that's something that's super fulfilling to you. I just think it's about understanding what people love. I mean, you usually find that out through the dating phase and like when you're, starting to build a relationship with somebody. So it's not like blindsided. I mean, I've always been like this.
Yes.
But I do think that like, again, once you get responsibilities in your life that you did not have, like Sundays were very different before Liam. Saturdays are very different. You know what I mean? So now now it's like, okay, listen, like that can't happen every week or,
right.
Like it's like, this is kind of something I want to do. I'm going to plan for this. It's far enough out. Like I'm not going to be able to do it every single week. Like I have been when I was 18, 19, 20 years old, but like, it's something I can still enjoy with my son or my wife. She can go with me, whatever.
Yeah.
And vice versa, the stuff you like to do. So yeah, I think sacrifice is a good word, but it doesn't have to be sacrifice from the lens of like somebody giving up something. I just think it's more about like sacrificing sacrificing something that the other person might not love to do or really, really find a ton of satisfaction with, but you do it because your wife or your husband really wants to. Like, and over the years, as I've gotten older and our relationships got more mature and stuff, it's like that ultimately ends up becoming more fulfilling anyway. You're like, she's having the time of her life or she's loves this. Like I'm good with this, Right. So
yeah, it's definitely true. And I think too, we've also worked out a good schedule where when you do want to go to the games, like if you're doing that on Sunday, then on Saturday, if I want to go get a facial, you're like, go get your facial. I'll watch Liam for an hour and a half while you're doing that. And so it doesn't feel like I don't know, maybe that goes back to that like tit for tat thing, but it feels more fair when it's like, okay, I have something I want to go do on my own. I need a little bit of alone time. I'm touched out from the week. This is what I wanted to go do on Saturday. You want to go to the game on Sunday, even if you're not going in the stadium, you want to go watch it with Malcolm at a bar. Like you can go do that for a few hours too. So we've also kind of worked out a schedule where like we both get to do things that both make us happy and like recharge our personal batteries without it feeling like one person always gets the shitty end of the stick.
Yeah. I think a small pivot, but I think it's important too, is like, used to be like, oh, I'm going to do this for you, or, you know, like approach you and say, hey, you can do this on Saturday. Because in the back of my mind, I wanted to go do this on Sunday. And although that's true, like small pivot would be like, you're doing that out of the goodness because you really want your significant other to be able to do that for themselves on that day, as opposed to just doing it so that you can go do your thing on Sunday, you know?
Right.
And then also just like honestly communicating and asking if the other person wants to be involved.
Yeah.
They're not going to say yes all the time, if not ever, but like just the pure communication of being like, hey, I am going to the game. I really want to go to the game. Do you want to go?
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, you're going to be like, hell no, I'm not going to the game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's about to be 98 degrees or it's about to be 10, you know, whatever. And it doesn't even have to be football, anything. But the recognition of like, listen, I'd love you to come with me. I really would love to do this. You want to go? That's different than saying, hey, I'm going.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I want to let you know I'm blocking this off for you so you're aware.
Right.
You know, it just doesn't, it's just, you know, whatever. So I do think there's I think that's how it was early on. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And like vice versa, you would do the same thing too in a lot of situations. And now it's just like, I generally would love for you to go do this with me, whatever it may be. Is that something you want to go do? And again, sometimes you're like, hell yeah, sweet. You know what I mean? It's amazing. And we have a great time. And other times you're just like, no, but I really appreciate you asking.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
it kind of goes back to that conversation around like you have your marriage battery that you have to recharge, but then you also individually have your own batteries you have to recharge, and everybody recharges differently.
Right.
And that's something that we've had to also really learn about each other. Like that's how you recharge your battery. That's what fulfills you. That's what brings you joy and happiness. I've had to learn to recognize that. And you've had to learn to recognize that what brings me joy and happiness and what fulfills my battery is very different from that.
Yep.
And once we
and sometimes it's the same though.
And sometimes it's the same. Yeah. And so once we could like learn that about each other and know that it was never going to change, like you accept that, then you can work around the obstacles of like the logistics and how it's going to work once you have a child and whatnot. And it makes life a lot easier. And both people come back better parents, I think, when they have that time to go do the things that make them happy.
Yeah. I think it's just learning and growing, man. That's what I think. It's just, think about it like just growth in general.
Right.
You know, it'll give us better perspective for Liam. It's better perspective on just like being a parent, being a husband, you know, being a working adult. Like it's for me, it's just like perspective and reps and like, you know, just learning things along the way.
Yes.
You know?
Okay. Some tangible tips for people who
tips. Okay.
Yeah. Some tangible tips for people who are looking to keep the flame alive. One, I think something has to give. You should outsource the things that are taking away from you feeling connected to your partner. So if you can, and you want to go do a date night and you have the means to do so, hire a babysitter. Mm-hmm. If you're a stay-at-home mom and you're absolutely drowning, you have no time for yourself, maybe you can get part-time childcare, like a Mother's Day Out program, 9 to 1, preschool. You could do it 2 days a week, something like that. I also think when your husband comes home at night, you can greet him at the door and just give him a hug, like give him a 10-second embrace. It releases oxytocin. Shane is very hands-on.
Huggy.
Yes, you love to hug. You love to hold hands.
That's
like,
right.
Always been 100% on the PDA. That's something that I earlier on in our relationship really had to get used to because I wasn't big on that. But now I realize I like it. It's
I hope
sweet.
so.
It's really sweet. Like I said, it releases the oxytocin. So if you do that for a week, you'll start to notice that you're less irritated with each other. A big one is eye contact. This is a really big one for me. I can't stand when you're talking to somebody and they're looking at their phone the entire time you're talking to them.
Eye contact, yeah.
Or a really big one, and this isn't even just in relationships or marriage, but I've noticed moms around their kids cannot hold a conversation with each other. Like if their kid says one thing, the conversation just ends right there. And like, that is such a big thing for me because I just think it's so rude, to be honest. And I understand that your kids need you, but like, I've really done a ton of work to try to teach Liam to be patient or try to teach him skills to like put his hand on my arm if mommy's talking and he wants my attention, he can put his hand on my arm and I will know that he's trying to communicate with me, but he needs to be patient and wait for me to finish talking instead of screaming, mommy, mommy, mommy 100 times through my conversation.
Agreed.
And that goes for marriage too. I think eye contact is really important. You should pay attention. We're really task focused. We're running around after our kids, distraction after distraction, 90% of the time. We're having a conversation and only like one ear is in that conversation. So I think it's a very fair thing for a lot of people to say, hey, just look at me for just a second while I'm talking to you so I know that you're listening to what I'm saying. And it's a respect thing, I think.
I think so too.
And it's a really easy, tangible thing that you can change immediately that will probably be a big game changer, I think, long term.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the last tangible thing I would say is date nights. Like if you can add in date nights, game changer. Like if you can do it once a month, set up a schedule. It's something you guys have to look forward to. If you really got it and you can do the longer trips, even if it's somewhere that you drive to. Like we're in Charlotte, you can drive to Charleston, you can go to Asheville, you can drive to Tennessee. You've got a lot, you can go to Atlanta. You got a lot of options where you don't need to, invest a ton of money in flights and things like that. Investing long-term in your partner is a huge thing because when the kids are gone, you're retired from work, who's left? Your partner.
Baby Liam.
No, baby Liam is going to leave.
He'll always be my baby.
I know, but he's going to leave and he's going to get married and he's going to create a life of his own. At the end of the day, the two people that are left are you and your partner. So I think you should invest in your partner first, work second. You always have to keep that intention of staying connected in the background of your marriage, I think.
Yeah, I agree. It goes by in a flash. I mean, we were just talking about it last night. It's about to be 3 in January. And it's wild. But I agree with all those. I think I just think that like also just parenting's tough, but it's also the most rewarding job in the world, and for me anyway. A lot of people say that it might be cliche, but it is. And I just think every family, every marriage is on their own journey. Like nobody's as perfect. If it is, then you're blessed. If whatever, but like I just think that like again, it's a journey and it's all about growth. And if you got into a relationship for the right reason, because you love that person endlessly, you'll do anything for them. Like, you'll work through any sort of issue. And it comes down to communication, being transparent, being vulnerable, being empathetic, right? All these things that are like, hey man, like this is my wife, this is my kid. Like this is the most important thing to me. All this might be a really difficult moment in time or a tough argument or whatever it may be. Like, the most important thing is to make sure that we get through this and we grow from this. And ultimately I'm doing what I need to do for my partner and my family. So
100%.
I just think everybody's on a different journey, and just make sure you take time for yourself and your marriage and it'll all work out.
Absolutely. I want to shift gears just a little bit. The other big question on social media is around marriage tips for those who are kind of like in the newlywed phase. What would you say what would you say your top 3 marriage tips are?
Right out of the gate?
Right out of the gate.
I think like for us, I don't think that we did a bad job at this, but if I had to go back in time, I would have traveled a lot more. I would have probably like leaned in and like done things that I think we both wanted to go do, not just travel, but like things that we wanted to purchase or places that we wanted to go, like, but we didn't do for whatever reason. I think I would go do those now, because if you think back about it, like you didn't have really like a ton of responsibilities at that time. Like when you're a newlywed, like, I mean, you're a newlywed, right? Like you're just coming off the wedding, honeymoon, maybe you just bought a new house, or you're like, hey, we're good. You know what I mean? Like you got a lot of excitement and stuff like that. And before you have a family or you start a family, like there's little to zero responsibility. And so I think that time, like you should really take advantage of doing the things that you really want to go do, seeing the people you want to see, spending time with the people you want to spend time with, and like, don't worry about the little things, because at the end of the day, you'll blink your eyes, 10 years will go by, and like, what was that extra, cash to go do that? Or like taking a couple extra days of PTO to go do, like, do it. You know what I mean? Do it. Because the other thing, I mean, if you think about it, like we have so many memories when we were new, like when we first couple years of our marriage before we had Liam, like places we went, the people we went to go see, just everything that we did, and I wouldn't trade those in for the world. And I think if anything, like I said, just make sure you're like, just do it. Like, there's nothing that's going to be more worth that. And then I also think like, I think the big difference between marriage and then dating, like let's just say engaged or whatever, until then you're actually married now is Like that's like your home, right? Like that's your guy's spot. And so like typically sometimes if people are living with each other before they get married, right, they're a little bit farther ahead. But if you really haven't for the most part, or maybe it's a new thing, there's a lot of boundaries there. You know what I mean? Like there's different things that people like to do, chores that people like to do versus others. Sometimes like through the dating phase, you can't pick up on cues like, are people like really, really neat and organized, or are they fly by the seat of their pants and this is what it is? Like, so I think that when you first came out of the gate married, like it's over. Like you guys are married now. It's all about like creating a long-term plan for your future financially, where you guys want to live, what do you want to go do, how many kids do you want, what type of family do you want to have, and it's like establishing those kind of boundaries and stuff like that. Like I feel like chores specifically, just like around the house and stuff like that, you and I were really good about like, dude, you hate to do this, but like I really love to do this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think
Shane loves the dishes. I hate the dishes. I love to vacuum. You definitely don't like to vacuum.
Yeah. So it's just like, hey man, like this is our house, dude. Right. Yeah. This is our humble abode.
Yeah.
Like
establishing those roles and responsibilities.
Yeah. Let's take care of it. And this is what we own and this is what we're going to do. Mm-hmm. It kind of goes into like the stuff we were talking about earlier with like intentionality around like when you have a child about who owns what. It's the same thing in the house. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like newlywed people or people earlier in a marriage argue over like probably the dumbest stuff. You know what I mean? It's things like that, like stuff around the house. What are we doing? It's communication. So I just think those things early on out of the gate were important for us, and we weren't perfect at all, but I feel like over time we got better and better with it.
Yeah. I think my top 3 tips would be, I think investing in the longevity of your marriage is a really big one that I think sometimes gets a really taboo stigma, especially from males. Like the investment that we made in going to see a marriage counselor helped us solve really big problems that were early on in our marriage. And
yeah, I agree. I was definitely not down with seeing a counselor.
No, and I don't think that you're alone in that. I think a lot of people think that the second that you say we're going to marriage counseling, that like your marriage is over. I think that's the stigma that
it is. It's definitely a thing out there that's like if you're talking to somebody like you have an absolute
you guys have like a huge problem in your marriage. When
I actually would say that I think that the reason why it was an easier transition for like, damn, this is just all about growth in our marriage. Growth is me as a person, growth for you, as opposed to like, oh, we're going to talk to somebody because we have a problem. Mm-hmm. It was more about like, no, dude, let's invest in this because like this is generally going to make us better and more happy and more fulfilled and better family. Yeah. Was the pre-marital counseling, right? Mm-hmm. Like, which I was totally against too. I'm like, wait, hold up. We're not even married yet. Yeah. I'm going to talk to a priest about like what? No, I'm solid. You know what I mean? Like we're not even married yet.
Yeah. Well, I think your exact words were, to me, were, why are we doing this? We don't have any issues. And I'm like, that's not what it's about. It's about,
which is, again, it's just like the thing out there. I mean, obviously, like, idiot me for thinking like that, but like that was the way that I'm like, well, people go talk to a counselor because they have an issue or they like, this is like their last resort. They're getting people together on to help them get through something, where it was like, no, we don't know anything about marriage. Right. Nothing. We don't know anything that we should be thinking about as a couple and as a married couple. Mm-hmm. So let's go talk to let's get a premarital counsel so he can walk us through all of the things that are about to change in your life once you get married, which we were like, no way. Like it's like in my mind, I was like, oh, it's going to be the same exact thing that we've been for the last 6 years, 7 years, whatever it was that we were dating. We're just gonna be married. And it's like, no, it doesn't really work like that. Yeah. There's a complete change.
A lot changes. Yeah. Your finances change, your living situation changes, how your goals in life become a shared goal instead of being separate goals. I mean, there's so many different things that change. And I think when I came to you and was like, I really want to do this, like these are glaring things in our relationship that we are having a really hard time coming to a mutual conclusion on how to handle them. Mm-hmm. I think we can become a much stronger couple, a much more powerful couple. The longevity of our marriage will be a lot better if we can get an outside opinion on like how we should handle these things. Yeah. So full transparency, like a big thing that was an issue for us in the beginning of our marriage was like how to handle in-laws. Like we had so many different dynamics going on with like Shane's family's up in New York. My family at the time was in Seattle. Like because they're both far away, like they have to come in and stay at our house for long periods of time. And that was something that was an issue in the beginning of our marriage. But then also after we had a child, your in-laws and extended family, they want to come visit even more than they were already there. Mm-hmm. And you just have different living styles and different habits and different expectations. And I think when you're early on in a marriage, you still don't understand that like your spouse is now your immediate family. And so there was a lot of, you know, wading through the generational like upbringing stigmas or just like expectations that each person's family had of their child.
Right.
And then how does our marriage fit into those expectations type of thing. And so we just had a really hard time like talking through that. What makes sense? How do we handle these situations? Like I didn't see eye to eye with some of the expectations your family had. You didn't see eye to eye with some of the expectations my family had. And that also, like, had we not, I think, found a mutual ground on that topic before we had kids, would have only been heightened after having kids. And the fact that we like really understood each other, came to, you know, boundaries, a mutual decision on boundaries in terms of in-laws and family members and things of that nature. Like now our relationship with our in-laws is so much better after having kids. And it's because we did the foundational work before we got to the point of having kids. And that was something that we did not because we thought our marriage was like going down the wrong path, but because I wanted to figure out how we could be a united front, how we could be stronger as a married couple on a topic that's actually really big. Like that's a big topic.
Huge.
On, you know, how do you integrate your families into this new marriage?
Yep.
And for families, I think it's also a big deal. Like they're accepting a complete stranger into their family at that point too, you know? And I think talking to your mom, she's like, one day you'll totally get this, but now that we have a son especially, but she's like, you know, you do kind of feel like that person is taking your child away from you a little bit. And that's also for families can be a hard pill to swallow sometimes.
Yeah.
And then how, you know, that can come out and how you treat each other and stuff like that. So
Especially for my mama.
yes, big mama's boy. But I get it. We just had to figure out how to work through it.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, we just come from two completely different dynamics, family backgrounds. I have a massive family, super close. It's just different. We're upstate New York. I mean, it's small towns feel. You have a much smaller family, which it just is what it is. It's two different dynamics. And yeah, my mom wants to be super involved and all that stuff. Yeah, we had to, I mean, it was going through kind of what that looks and feels like. And, you know, to your point, you made a great one. It's like, hold on, like, yeah, it's important for me to respect what they want and make sure they're involved and like do whatever I can possibly do to make sure they're part of this family and part of the kids. But at the same time, like, let's not forget about like numero uno. Which is my which is you and Liam. So I think we've really worked through that and stuff like that. I agree. It's never been stronger than it is. So
yeah, I think honestly,
but the foundational work early on was critical.
Yeah.
I think.
I don't think we would be where we are today on that topic had we not laid that foundation early on in our marriage. And that was something that we did shortly after we got married. And they were tough conversations. Like those sessions were not fun. It was really hard. There were tears that were shed, especially by me. And you could have easily said like, this isn't fun. I don't want to do this anymore. But you knew that it was important to me and you respected that. And at the end of the day, it ended up being like one of the best things we've ever done for our marriage.
Yep.
So I think like that is probably my number one tip. Yes, it's an investment. Yes, it's expensive. You can find people out there that are covered by your insurance. Unfortunately, Amy is not covered by insurance, but it's an investment in your partner and an investment in the longevity of your marriage. So if there's anything that you guys don't see eye to eye on or anything that is like a topic that is repeatedly coming up in your marriage, I would highly recommend going to a therapist or a marriage counselor or somebody of that expertise to see if they can help you kind of iron out how to handle that. And I promise you, 10 years down the road, you will be so thankful that you did that. And the stigma around like there's something wrong with our marriage, like that shouldn't even be a thought. That is not, nobody is perfect. No marriage or cohabitation is perfect. Like everybody has these issues. And then I think my second tip is communication. Huge. Like you have to learn how to communicate with each other. You have to sit down and understand each other's communication styles. And a lot of times that's different. Like your partner has a different communication style than you. And I think if you can sit down and figure that out together, like what do you need from me? What is your expectation in terms of communication? How can we make sure that this is a very fluid thing between the two of us? That's great early on in marriage, but also again, lays the foundation for when you have kids because communication is 100% like the culprit of everything when you have children.
Big time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think communication across the board, not only marriage, but obviously when you have kids is critical.
Yeah.
It's almost like you have to be more proactively communicating.
And you're not just thinking about yourself anymore. You have somebody else in the relationship that you have to think of in terms of communication.
Yep.
And I think when you first get married, you're so used to operating as a solo entity that it's hard to remember, like, wait, I have somebody else that I have to be thinking about and be putting first now too.
Yeah, I agree.
And then I think my third thing would probably be like scheduling the date nights. Like if that's something that you can do early on in your relationship, if you can make time for each other, that's such cherished, special time. That's a habit that you will also then carry over later on in life when things change and you have kids in the picture. And like, that's something we've always done. It's something we've always been good at. We've had to work at it a lot harder after having kids, but it's something that we're like, hey, wait a second. Like this really brought us a lot of joy. This really recharged our marriage battery. This is important to us. This is what makes us happy. It now doing that also makes us better parents. And so we're like, let's get back to that.
You got to schedule it. You got to land on it. You got to commit to it. It can't be like a thing. Oh, let's do this. And like, it gets through like the whole phase of like, oh, I feel way better now that we're going to go actually do that. And then you just don't do it. So it's like getting it on the calendar, making sure it's happening. It doesn't have to be like a date night to going out to dinner or a movie. Like you can just say, hey, like I need a break for 2-3 hours, dude. Like, let's go walk around and like, grab a drink and just hang out outside. I mean, whatever it may be. Yeah. It's just to say,
let's go to a concert. Let's go to the Whitewater Center. Let's just go for a walk. Let's go for a run together. Let's schedule a workout class. Like our date nights look different all the time. I mean, for Christmas, I did a whole day date situation and like you can go get a massage together. Father's Day, we just went and got a massage together and hung out at the Ballantine pool, the rest of the day. And I scheduled a sitter and it was during the day. Like whatever brings you joy, it can be different. Shane's a big experience guy. Like I've had to learn what his love language is and he loves experiences. Yep. And I am the polar opposite of that. So that was another learning lesson for me where I was like, this is what makes him happy. I like tangible, like I'm a gift giver. I love to give gifts, but he likes experiences. And so now all of my gifts to you are some type of experience, but it's so fun because it's something we get to do together most of the time. And it's time that we schedule in that we normally wouldn't have together that is focusing on just you and I. So that has really been, I think, a big mover in our marriage too.
I agree.
Cool. Well, that was all the tea.
Is that it? I'm off the hook already?
You're off the hook. See, it wasn't that bad, right?
No, it was great. I love this thing.
Yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. It was definitely very interesting to have my husband here.
Yeah. Love you, honey.
30 episodes in,
Chocolate
but this is a good one.
That's right. Keep working on it out there. It only gets better with time.
It does.
We age like fine wine.
We do. All right. Thank you guys for listening. We will see you next week.